All right, guys, welcome back. Strong Life Podcast with a repeat guest, Maddie Nichol. Great to have you, my bro.
Nice.
Canada in the house.
It's always great to hang out and chat, man.
I can't wait to hug it out in person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Things are kind of still on lockdown, correct?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the province of Ontario we're strange. We're like Siberia. I'm not sure exactly. I'm not usually a very political guy, but I'm not really exactly sure what we're doing here. It seems like we've got access to different science that every other place in North America doesn't seem to have access to. We're
Right.
kind of on a different plan here. So I'm not really sure. I
The,
mean, I guess in 5 or 10 years we'll see who's right or who is wrong, but it seems very odd right now. Yeah.
the world is in a strange place. The only thing you could count on is if you put more weight on the bar, you will get stronger. Right now, that's the only thing in the world that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. I love it.
Where I heard that was many, many years ago. Jim Wendler told me he was at, I think it was the NSCA National Convention, and it may have been the CSCCA. I'm not sure, but he sits down at a table, and Coach Ethan Reeves sits down with him, and I think they had just finished listening to like somebody give, a pretty like detailed presentation, and Coach Reeves says, last time I checked, really the best way to get strong is to add weight to the bar. They all started laughing because it was probably Jim was probably sitting with Dave Tate. Who knows? It may have been, no, it couldn't have been a Swiss conference. It's probably, I think it was NSCA, because he said Coach Reeve was wearing, like the suit up top, but the pants were shorts.
That's your
So
guy, right? Ethan Reeves, your guy, right?
yeah, he's
Yeah.
definitely one of my early mentors. So is, Jim Wendler, Dave Tate
Yep.
coming across Elite FTS. And so, you
I used
know,
the fantastic Ethan Reeves. He published a chin up pull up program on Elite FTS years ago
oh,
that I used, and I've never, I've never met him. I'd love to, but it was a great program for a lot of guys to improve their chin up strength. It was good.
I think I recall reading that, and where he really got into all the body weight stuff was he told me when he was young, middle school kid, or they had it called it junior high school. High school started in 10th grade. He may have been like in 8th grade. He was out on the like playground area during recess, and some of the older kids were like trying to like mess with him, play tag, and they were kind of getting a little rough. So he's like, I figured out how to like spin behind him and choke him out. And so one of the older kids ran and told the wrestling coach, like, Coach, you got to see this kid is like choking. He's choking our best guy. So the wrestling coach sees him and says, listen, you can't wrestle for us yet. You're not in high school. And Coach Reeves says to him, what do I got to do to become a great wrestler? And the coach says, you've got to do a lot of push-ups. And he said, he never told me how many. So I just simply assumed 500 was the number. So he goes, that day on was 500 push-ups. He said, I would begin my day with 250 push-ups, like not banging them out, kind of go down, lock it out. One, very, strict. And then 250 at night. He goes, my favorite is doing 10 sets of 50 sprinkled throughout the day. And so he said, doing all of those push-ups got him strong. Then it became pull-ups. Then it became always finding ways to like work his grip. So he said in those days that the magazines, as you know, Maddie, the magazines always were selling kind of like, the crusher, the grip
I,
thing. He's like, so
I
I
had
would
I had
buy
I
all
had them
those.
all. I had all that
Yes.
stuff.
Something about those early advertisements kind of sucked you in because you didn't, without social media, you had to use your imagination as to what you could become. And those ads were all about like becoming a He-Man or, beating up the bully. And so they inspired you to just use your imagination and to work. But anyway, you and I wanted to hop on, do this podcast together. You were in the strength and conditioning field before I was. And I mentioned in our first podcast, I heard about you through Brian Grasso at his first IYCA certification, which he doesn't do that anymore. He sold that, but he was talking about you and top coach, great coach. We're talking about hockey. And so I guess I learned about your name probably around 2004. It may have been earlier, but when I saw Brian, that was the pilot. And so you and I were discussing this mentorship that we've had by many different coaches. Some coaches we've actually never met, and they've kind of silently mentored us, and we take pride in sharing all the knowledge. And you actually shared a lot of coaches who you learned from in your early years. And so the way this conversation was sparked was I saw a coach who trained with me, and he even came to my gym when he was no longer an athlete to just, do the can I pick your brain? He wanted to open up a gym. He's like, I want to do this. I want to do exactly what you're doing. So I remember breaking it down for him. Here's what you do. Here's what you look for. Da da da. And I don't really follow him, but here and there I'll come across an interview he's done. And it's interesting. He'll never mention my name. They're like, how did you get started? Who influenced you? And it's weird because I even noticed that, like with my certification, is like people came to the cert, they implement the warm up, the program design, but they'll never say, I went through this certification or I learned from this guy. I don't want to say never. There's certainly people
Yeah.
that do, but I just find it strange that people are afraid to say, hey, this person helped me or this person inspired me. Whereas for me, I love sharing, especially the lesser known coaches, And so that's kind of strange. And you, I don't know how much you're around other coaches, Maddie, because you're, still coaching athletes. So I just weird. We're in our 40s, but I don't want to sound like grumpy old man.
It's true though, and I think that's it's one of the things that I think resonated with me the first few times I started seeing things you're posting, and then we spoke, and there was a lot of points of connection there, and then on the podcast we did together again, it was just like I said, just chopping it up with a friend for an hour,
Yes.
and shoot, and there was so much connection there, and I think because there were the paths were, there were different paths, but they were similar paths, and I think that's one thing that is very important to me. How many people I had along the way that mentored me, and I think much like you, I'm proud of the things that I've done. I think I'm a really good coach and done some cool things and had some successes here and there. But really, I've seen I've been around some giants in the field, and it just keeps you in check and it keeps you in perspective. And I always try to give respect to those guys who came before me, for sure.
Right. It's like keeps you, I guess it humbles you, especially because I
Absolutely.
always forget who says it. Maybe Bob Alejo has said it on Twitter, or Vern Gambetta, but they'll say, tell me what you call it now, and I'll tell you what we used to call it 30 years ago. They say something like
Yeah.
that. And even, thinking back to when Brian Grasso was talking about you, that was at his certification. And at his certification, he had Dr. Evan Osar there, and he had Lee Taft there. And I thought it was cool that he brought in other experts, even though it was quote unquote his certification. He kind of had like this advisory board. And so I think it's, of course, more fun to do a seminar with your friends who are experts. And kind of that's what's came about. Like I have a certification coming up in the middle of August, and one of my friends signed up for it. And I was like, dude, what the F are you doing? Like, why don't you just come down and talk? Come down and like speak. And so I thought that was cool too, is that, my buddy Joe, his name's Joe Riggio, they own a place called Varsity House Gym. They have 3 locations. And I'm like, dude, like we're friends. You should be just come down and hang out. But I thought that was interesting too, that a guy who's already, quote unquote, all set is signing up for a certification, and he doesn't really coach too much. He's more overseeing and managing. So I thought that was like a real, not shocker to me. Dude, I've been buying a lot of books lately. They're all over my desk. My wife's going to kill me. But like, I'm assuming you're doing the same thing. You're still hungry to learn.
Absolutely. I love it. And it's funny, I think about a mentor of mine, a good friend of mine now, Dr. Ken Kanakin, who
Yes.
literally, and still to this day, he takes every course, like any anything you've heard of, anything you've seen. And the thing that the thing I respect about him the most is that a lot of the stuff he's studying things that are certainly outside, but maybe even sometimes like diametrically opposed to his way of practicing or his point of view, and he still takes that course. He takes the certification, he reads the book, he buys the product, right? He just has that passion for learning, you know, and that passion for you know, being the best you can be. And part of being the best you can be is to be continually learning and exploring new ideas and trying new things. And you know, I think that's something that resonates with me for sure. I'm just cleaning up my office the other day and packing up books, and it's almost a little bit embarrassing because you think and I have that conversation with my wife too, where she's at this point, she's like, seriously, like, you don't know how to exercise, you got to buy another book on exercise. Like, what? I don't understand.
Oh.
I thought you knew how to exercise. What do you
That's
have?
right.
You have 800 books. You need 801 books on exercise. Like,
My wife said, she texted me, she's like, so we're in my office, there's bookshelves to my right. In front of me, I got the plastic containers of books and the
Yeah.
old magazines. More to the left, more in the bookshelf there. And then here is like a back room, and now there's books there. And she's like, what books can I throw out? And I was like, don't you dare throw anything. You know, it was like somebody was like stealing my children.
Because
you know?
that arm routine from the 1991 September issue of Flex magazine,
Dude,
you're going to need that next month.
you
You're going
need
to need
that.
it. You know, you got to get it. Yeah.
I love to go through the old ones. So here's a recent book I purchased. Okay. Put it in.
Oh,
front.
yeah.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
So Bounding, the complete book on plyometric training by Frank Costello.
Yeah.
Inside, there's no copyright, but when I looked it up, I think it was 1980. I think it was 1980. So the guy on the cover is Peter Koch. Do you remember Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood? And he beats up that guy Swede. Yeah. So this is Swede on the cover. He was a football player at Maryland, and that's
Amazing.
where Frank Costello was from. What's interesting, Maddie, about these older books is that they're not so perfect. So meaning, you know, when they're talking about speed training, they're sending people on like 300 and 400 meter runs. There's not like just run 10 meters, you know, like God forbid you run over 10 meters, like the world is going to end. Then it talks about stretching, like stretch for 15 minutes, it says. And then the jumping is, some of the jumps are high reps. It'll say something like 5 minutes of leaping and bounding. It doesn't tell you exactly how much.
And now, right now, that would spark a like 10-day full out war on social media about leaping is not the right word because
that's
of
right. Yes. In fact, there's like a word in there where it says jumping, but the guy's on one foot and you know, oh, that's a hop. Like now you're going to burn in hell for saying that, you know?
But Frank Koch didn't care. He just jumped over a friggin' school bus and he wasn't sure if it was a leap or a bound or a jump.
Yeah. Think about that. So like, Peter Koch played football at Maryland. And then I don't know how long, but he was in the NFL. And they say that era of the 80s was like fucking monsters. Like those guys were just savages. And their strength training was, you know, a little bit of Olympic lifting. You know, of course, they did cleans with not the best technique because who knew Olympic lifting in America in the 80s? Not too many people. They were doing leg extensions, leg curls. They would do distance running. Offensive linemen would go out and, you know, run 2 or 3 miles. And they did that for fitness. Even this book, you know, you probably have this book, Soviet Training and Recovery Methods. Yeah. Great book. I think this is a little bit older too. This is from, let's see, what year? 1990. So I'm a freshman in high school. And even these older books by the Soviets, the Germans, I noticed like the volume of work is higher than normal. So let's say like I have kids jumping. It's usually going to be, you know, something like, you know, sets of, you're going to do 2 to 3 reps. They got people jumping for 10 reps. And I just find it interesting. We try to get so perfect on things, but then it's like, okay, so I'll get my mentorship, right, from some older coaches. Then I'll get some of this kind of, people won't think it'll fit in, but the Nautilus book, of bodybuilding. And then look at this one. This is an old one. Remember this book, Beef It?
No, I did not have Beef It. I can, you know what? At least I had to draw the line somewhere. I did not have Beef It.
That is funny. Well, I think Robert
Might be a
Kennedy
great book. Yeah.
was he in Canada? The guy who
Toronto. He's a Toronto guy, or he was. Yeah.
So he had all of those series of bodybuilding books, by Robert Kennedy. So, you mentioned kind of Dr. Ken Kanakin taking courses that are almost opposing what he does in the field of chiropractic work, or maybe even in health and the whole medical field. If my memory serves me correct, did you do studying under Mel Siff, Matt? I can't remember. I know Charlie Francis.
No, Charlie, I spent a lot of time with. Yeah, not Mel. I mean, I've read Super Training, 17 times. I'm still not sure I understand it, but I keep reading it every year. I'm like, this is the year I'm going to go start to finish and get it. But yeah,
I think he was the one who would tell anybody who he mentored that you need to study the exact opposite of what you believe in. And he said sometimes if you are in a disagreement with somebody, you should immediately flip sides and take their side and just like see what it is, like see what it feels like to be trying to think like them. So if you went to Mel Siff and said, Mel, I want to study everything on speed training, like how to build the world's fastest 100-meter runners, he'd say, okay, go to that bookshelf and read everything on distance training. And you'd say, well, why do I want to do this? Like I'm talking to you about the 100-meter. I want to be the world's best coach for the 100-meter. He's like, well, how do you know what is the world's best needed unless you do, and study everything that's the complete opposite? And I think coaches today, these younger coaches, and I'm talking if you're like under 35, they may not know who Dorian Yates is. They may not understand what is intensity look like, for high intensity bodybuilding, or, where did this odd object training come from? Did they have read dinosaur training or seen Dr. Ken Leisner lifting like car engines? And I feel like you miss out on these pieces of the puzzle to train athletes in a unique manner.
You hit on two things there that I think are key and are really important. One is that, and I'm sure every generation complains about the next one coming up, and our parents complained about us and their parents complained about them. But I think there is a critical difference here, though. I think one thing that is a game changer that you can't compare, your parents had television, their parents did not. That's significant, right? It's significant, but each generation had something the other didn't. But the advent to me of search engines, things like Google, in this context that we're talking about learning, it's a very significant, monumental change. And here's why. I think that before, all those books that you've collected, if you wanted to know anything about anything, we're talking about strength training and powerlifting and Olympic lifting and bodybuilding and sports training, but this could apply to any subject. If you wanted to know something, you didn't have a lot of options. Your options were to go to an older, wiser person, your brother, your dad, your uncle, a neighbor, a high school coach, and have enough social skills to be able to relate to that person and talk to them and garner some information and not be a dick so that they're willing to talk to you and help you. Or you had to go to a library and figure out how to use the Dewey Decimal System and find a book and check it out and read it and make some notes. And it was you had to make a very significant personal investment. Yes. And then you actually had to go and practice that knowledge and information. So the amazing thing about things like Google is that I'm imagining myself at that age, like that was it. Go to the library, and if there was a book, if there was a book on strength training, and I'm from a small town in Ontario, Canada, it's not like we had Soviet sports training texts, right? So there might be a book that might apply to training, maybe, and then hopefully you get a bodybuilding magazine because those guys look pretty strong. So I guess that's good. But a huge part of it is you had to go to the gym, and there wasn't personal trainers or strength coaches, at least in where I'm from. So there was a ton of trial and error, and you looked for the biggest guy in the gym, and you pretended not to watch, but you watched, and you secretly watched what he did. and then you tried to replicate it and you didn't know what the hell you were doing and you had no idea why you were doing it. But he looks big. So I guess it makes sense. And so some of that is silly and we can laugh about it, but a part of that is an important process of learning information. Whereas now in 5 seconds, bang, I've got instant access to millions and millions and millions and millions of articles and videos that have not been vetted at all.
Yeah.
And you could, you right now, you could tell me a story about your gym in New Jersey, and you could tell me the name of the street, and you could describe the trees and the cars and the buildings, and you could tell me about the people that you see. And if I make really good notes when we get off this call, I can tell you about a gym that I own in New Jersey, and I can tell you what it's called and what street it's on, and it sounds like I know what the hell I'm talking about, and it sounds like it's my gym, but I've never been there. I just listened to something you said or watched something you posted. I don't know. I haven't been there. I haven't done it.
I never looked at it that way. There are people who can reiterate, recycle
100%.
what somebody said just from consuming their videos and
Yep.
podcasts so much.
100%. And it's not necessarily, and if I describe that to you, could you say, well, is that incorrect? Is there not a street by that name in New Jersey? Is there not a gym by that name? And does that gym not look like that? So it's all factually correct, but
Yeah.
I don't know it. I didn't live it. And I think that's a problem when you're teaching and educating people, because unless you understand why the program was designed the way it was, or why did they do the leaping and the bounding, and why was it this many reps, and hopefully they had a reason, but unless you know the why, the what and the how doesn't really matter.
If you looked back at this book, just thinking of it, why do you think like the bounding and everything, like I'll pull up a workout, was like longer? So here's like a sample. It says warm up and flexibility. All right. So we don't know what that means. Warm up and flexibility, very general. Weight training for 45 minutes, then do basketball skills for 45 minutes. This is like off season for any athlete. Then easy cross country run, either early in the morning or early in the evening. And this is for basketball. I'm sorry. So it's for basketball. So warm up and flexibility, that's on Monday. Then the next part is you do your weight training, 45 minutes. Then you do your basketball skill work. So right there, I know people would freak out. Oh my God, you lifted weights, you fatigued the nervous system. The shot is going to be off. Then the next part of your day is a cross-country run. You could do it after your basketball, after you've already ran for 45 minutes playing basketball, or you could go later. So our warm-up is going to take 10 minutes maybe. Then we're going to lift for 45 minutes. That's an hour. Basketball for another 45 minutes. So we're at about 2 hours. God forbid we didn't have our like intra meal or whatever, intra workout meal. And now you're going to run again. And it's really interesting. Then Tuesday, warming up. Then it says plyometrics, in place hops, 3 sets of 10 then rest 20 seconds. Sideways hurdles, 2 sets of 30 seconds. Forward hurdle jumps, 2 sets of 5, then play basketball. Then it says warm down with an easy 1.5 mile run. So just think about that, Matt.
Yeah.
They're promoting distance running every day. They're doing weightlifting before. Why do you think?
Well, I
kind of have an idea why they organize that way. What do you think?
I'm going to say 2 things, and part of this is is strictly my opinion.
Yeah.
The other part is not entirely my opinion. I have spent time working in the former Soviet Union, and I've spent time with former Eastern Bloc coaches. So some of this is just my own personal thoughts. Some of it is based on some pretty good life experience and research. Is that one thing? And I remember Tudor Bompa was the first guy to say that to me, because I'd always bring him these, this article about Soviet sport, this and this, and Romanian this and East German that. And I remember after a few weeks of this, he sat me down. He said, "Please stop it with this." He goes, "Do you have a time machine?" He goes, "Do you want to go back and live in the Soviet Union in 1980? This is not." He goes, "You have to understand, you're seeing the end product of the system. You're not seeing, the anywhere from 5 to 95% of athletes that were crushed in that system, right? But your choice. I mean, if you grow up in Bulgaria, and a guy like you, or perhaps a guy like me, your options are to be a Olympic weightlifter or a wrestler, or you're going to go work at a boot factory. You know, if you're a little girl growing up in Romania, you could be maybe a swimmer, maybe a diver, maybe a
Yeah.
tennis
Did I
gymnast.
tell you my
Yeah,
dad grew up in Romania?
you
Did I
did,
tell you
yeah.
that story? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great. So I mean, look at they're held up on a pedestal of their
Yeah.
system of training gymnasts. Well, I don't know if it's the best system. I know that if you're a little girl in Romania, I don't know how many options you had. So either you're going to be somebody's wife and a mother, or you're going to go, I don't know, plow a field or become a gymnast. Like there's not a
Yeah.
ton of so you've already got a much broader sample size, and you don't account for all of the people that system did not work for, that got crushed by that system.
Yeah.
You
Survival of
know,
the fittest.
yeah, like a Ben Johnson or a Usain Bolt or guys like they wouldn't survive necessarily in a system like that. That's the negative. The
Yeah.
positive that I would say is that that generation of people, they just grew up harder and tougher. They climbed trees and they played Red Rover or British Bulldog or some iteration of stuff like that. That you wrestled and had fist fights, and that was, I mean, now, my God, you'd be sent to jail if you wrestled a kid. But that was a normal thing that you did. That was
Yes.
being a kid, and we played tackle football and we didn't wear helmets and we rode our bikes and all this stuff, which I am not advocating for at all. I'm just saying it is what it is. And I
Yeah.
think that there was just a different level of toughness, and you go beyond to our parents and our grandparents' age,
Yeah.
growing up in the backdrop of world wars and depressions and things like that. You had a different kind of toughness. And I think that there was less interest in how you felt and less interest about your opinion about things, and just a certain element of just suck it up and get your shit done, and I think
I
that
agree. I
yeah.
think they placed a premium on just being fit. They didn't look at special strengths, power, endurance, speed, endurance. In that thing, there's like, you can do hurdle jumps and you're resting 20 seconds.
Yeah.
I've read some books that say you must rest 9 minutes for all, like, ATP to be fully restored before this next set. And it's like, dude, I can't give kids fucking 9 seconds to stop before they get distracted. And so we think that the training's got to be this like optimal, perfect scenario. And I remember I texted my buddy who coached in the NFL, and I was like, hey, man, what kind of distances were you doing speed work when you were doing sprint training with the guys? What did it look like for the big guys? What did it look like for the skill guys? And I was like, oh, man, I have a hill that's longer. He's like, dude, you're building an anaerobic endurance base. He's like, and you're building mental toughness. He's like, those are crucial aspects of sport. And I was like, man, I'm embarrassed to say that I was trying to make it so perfect for high school kids, which is they need to simply be athletic. And today I took a football team, and instead of warming them up inside the sport bubble, and it's like, hey, go halfway across the court, I took them out onto a grass field. And so things were a little bit longer. And just by doing the same stuff a little longer and without being in the bubble, I saw that it had like a impact on their emotions. Some of them were like, oh, like acting like they were so tired. And I was like, guys, they were freshmen. I said, let me tell you something. We're doing everything we do outside that we've done inside. It's like 20 foot longer. That's it. So don't act like you're getting your ass kicked. It's no different. You're going to have to be able to play football at somebody else's school. It's a turf or grass field. It's the same as what you're doing. Don't let the different location all of a sudden change your fitness level. And I've been really big on just feeling like people are lacking grit and toughness. Everything is a problem. Like, oh no, I can't squat heavy today. I'm doing XYZ tomorrow. And then I say to them, guys, when we play football, how many days a week do we run? 6. Yeah. And your game is on a Friday, which means it's at the end of a training week. So you need to be able to train and perform when your legs are a little tired. You can't always be perfect. And I think that what you're saying is true, is like, we need to get back to some volume of work where we're tougher and more durable. I'm not saying anything, do stupid stuff,
What's funny,
crazy
because you
things.
used the football example, and there was a post I threw up just meaning to be a joke last week on Instagram, my stories. From hurdles, it was some, I don't know if you call it a nutcracker or the Oklahoma drill or what, but like two high school football players laying on their back, helmet to helmet, in between the two blocking bags. And the joke is that this drill is responsible for creating more high school basketball players than any other thing in history. So because most kids quit football because they just can't take it, and I'm so conflicted because I get it. I get that, like, all of the neurobiophysiology of football and the agility and the reaction and all this kind of stuff. And there's so many better things that you can do. I absolutely get it, and I also understand the implications for head trauma and injury. But I remember being a freshman and scared shitless. And it was my turn to go. And it was, biggest, strongest. I'm 14. It's a 16-year-old kid, the biggest, strongest kid. I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling scared. And I got up first and knocked this kid on his ass. And all of a sudden now, hey, you know what? I actually might be good at this. And hey, you know what? I feel good about myself, and I'm good at tackling. I'm tough. And you know what? It made me feel less scared. And then when I got into a game, I wasn't scared when that running back is coming up on a 22 dive left, and I'm going to stick my head in the hole because I've done that. And I
competed.
I completely get, and I'm personally very conflicted because is it a very scientific drill? No. Are there coaches that abuse it? For their own enjoyment or the expense of the kids. Yeah. And I've probably been that guy, to be honest with you. I can think there was days that, we'd have a chuckle about putting two guys up there but it was what it was, and you learn and you grow and you get better. But I can tell you, for me personally, that was like a man maker of a drill for me. It gave me that confidence,
You mentioned two things. So number one, you had to compete. You were challenged to compete. Also, I think at those, like you said, kids were more physically prepared. I tell freshmen all the time, do you need me to get better at push-ups, sprinting, squats, lunges? You don't need me. Here's something interesting that's kind of blowing my mind is I've been at this high school for 2 years, and I've seen kids that have not gotten bigger or stronger. They don't eat, they don't support the training. They're not obsessed when they're in there. And so I said to kids, I go, man, some of you are talking to people while they're in the middle of a set. Some of you're talking to somebody, but you got one eye on me to kind of do something when I'm not looking. You're not able to, you're not strong. And I go, aren't you afraid to get your ass kicked by somebody who's fucking twice your size? And so you mentioned that you were afraid to do this drill. Then you had a good experience. You knocked a guy on his ass. But if you got your ass kicked,
yeah, absolutely.
The
Could have been a different story. Could have been a different story. 100%.
And so
I get it. I get the arguments against it. I'm just sharing it, and then I flash forward as a freshman in university. We've got our starting fullback, Delando Hawthorne, guy just came, he had a full ride at Maine, probably was NFL bound, had a terrible ankle injury, big reconstructive surgery, leaves, comes back. So this is 6'3", 245, 250, probably a 6-7% body, just a beast of a guy. That's my first rep in training camp. He's coming up, and I gotta step up and fill the hole.
Step up.
And you know what? That, you could have done that non-contact. We could have done that drill non-contact, and I could have got my footwork the same. I could have been in the right position, but you know what? If I don't step in there and make that hit and make that collision, that's a game changer for me, because that was like the biggest, scariest dude I'd ever gone up against as a running back. He's bigger than me, and I'm okay. I made the hit. I made the play. Okay, I can do this at the university level. I can do it,
Yeah. The fear, I feel, inspires you to want to get stronger. I always say, younger kids of the 80s, because of how many bullies and kind of there was always that kid that was messing with somebody, you were afraid, and you're like, if I could look stronger and put on muscle, I'm less likely to get picked on. And so
your sport, you're a wrestler. That's your background. So I mean, that to me is one of the purest sports that way, because how the fuck are you gonna
dude?
You gotta wrestle. If you
wrestle, I was always thinking
there's nothing you can do,
And I always had a guy in my weight class, so I'm like, man, I gotta fucking lift and run. My whole thought process, which I believe is wrong, but this is really how champions think, is I had to outwork the competition. My buddy Aaron Osmus has a Instagram pen and paper strength app. It's great. And
Oh
he's like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the
I've seen that.
champion will outwork everybody and then question himself, what should I have done? And then the kind of, I don't know what he said. He didn't say the loser, but let's just say the whoever will, always figure out what's the shortcut? How do I get out of this scenario? How do I get out of this situation? And so, lately as a coach, I'm really trying to instill and give kids the opportunity to train as hard as they want to win. But I'm shocked at how kids could be 140 pounds as a junior in high school and not want to get bigger. And because if I'm going to play football, somebody's coming to tackle me. And if I don't have a, a suit of armor on my body, which is more muscle, it's going to hurt. And it's crazy. Some kids don't care if they're just part of the team, they're not starting. So it's wild, so to
Yeah,
speak,
I can't understand. I mean, I don't know. For me personally, and again, I wasn't pushed. My parents were not athletes.
Yeah,
They wanted us. They wanted my brother and I to play sports because, for all the socialization reasons, and they thought it was good to build a good work ethic and discipline. They didn't care which sport we played or what we did, as long as we worked hard and had fun.
yeah,
But I had that, I was at the YMCA every night, at least 5, usually 6 nights a week,
right.
wasting, 98% of my time was completely wasted doing stupid, useless shit.
Me too.
But that was part of the process.
Correct.
It was all like part of that is earning your stripes and earning the mileage that you require. And we did get big and strong, and we would lift for 2 hours, and then we played basketball for an hour
Correct.
and a half and squash for an hour and a half, and we did all that stuff, and no one was telling us what to do, or the rest times, or the intervals. And I think now these kids, they're
It's
so
too perfect.
can you imagine having access to you when you were your age? Like, that would be, it would be so great. But then a part of me says, well, you know what? It would be great because I wouldn't have done all this stupid shit. I would have done more productive stuff. However, I would have missed out on that process of that hunger and that drive and the trial and error,
Correct.
and going there with my buddy Chris, who was a hockey player, and he's like, here's some shit that I saw at, hockey guys doing. I'm like,
Yeah.
here's something I read in a bodybuilding magazine.
Oh,
Let's
let's
combine 7
yes.
different programs at once and do them
And
all
let's talk to
together.
that guy. That guy's huge. The let's muster some bravery and social skills to go and speak to that
Absolutely.
guy. And if we work hard, maybe he'll see that we're working hard and we can earn his respect. Those things can still exist. To see I would love to see those things exist. One thing that's interesting, Matt, that I'm getting this feeling is like strength is a bad word. Like it's an offensive word. Like if you're getting somebody strong, then people almost equate it to they're not going to be athletic, they're going to be slow, almost like the 70s when they said if you lift weights and build muscle, it will then become fat. It's like if you're strong, you're not going to be an athlete. Like everything has to revolve around speed. But when I think strength, I always say, I don't want to see grinding reps. I want an element of speed. And I think strength coaches of this kind of modern era don't really understand how to get people
That's
strong.
JL Holdsworth said something amazing, and when he was at Swiss, and Ken posted it the other day. It's like, there are all these strength and conditioning coaches, quote
Yes,
unquote
I
strength and
saw
conditioning,
him post that. Yes,
that don't know how to get strong. And that's okay. That's okay if you are, a physiotherapist. I mean, I still think it would be of huge benefit to you if you're a physiotherapist, but like, they
right,
don't know strength. They don't know it. They haven't lived it, and they haven't been on. And it's not to say that you have to. You do not have to be a world-class power lifter, or you do
right.
not have to have 19-inch arms that's not at all what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that if you've never really, embraced the process, if you've never dove headfirst into it, if you've never immersed yourself in it, I don't know how you can call yourself a strength coach. You could be a rehab person. You could be a speed coach, maybe. Even them, most of them are pretty good strength coaches. But like,
Yeah.
you get what I'm saying? Like, I think that's the problem, is that there are a lot of personal trainers, and we'll get interns. You know, some of them even at a master's level of kinesiology, of the strength conditioning. They can't do a squat. They've never done a squat. They can't
Somebody
teach.
else told me
They
that
can't
also.
teach or coach a squat. You know, it's which is that's okay. But then why it's just an odd line of work to get into if that's not what you do, you know?
Yeah, that would be like a nutrition coach who doesn't believe in eating healthy. You'd be like, well, you're telling me all the right stuff, but it's strange that you just don't actually do it yourself.
Yeah.
It's strange. So let's kind of, close out here, Maddie, because it's a little bit late. I want to ask you kind of final question. Last time we chatted, you had a very small setup, I think of 1,000 square feet. You moved into a larger setup. So what changes did you make to the weight room? What did it allow you to add? And have you, we mentioned kind of Google and search. I'm just wondering if you've kind of gone down. Guys like you and I tend to go down the rabbit hole. We'll study a lot. So have you been researching any other sport performance coaches that you like what they're doing and you're learning from them?
Yeah, I mean, there's always lots, and I tend to come back to. It's funny because I'll see somebody, in a course, or I'll see somebody on social media, and it sounds really cool and interesting, and I'll go down that rabbit hole a little bit, but I always circle back to some of the guys, and a guy like Dan Paff is a guy that I talk to regularly. We've got a great big huge new space that we have 30 some odd yards of turf inside, so we can do a lot of acceleration work inside. We've got fields outside. We've got 4 field turf fields and a mondo track. So I've been on the horn with Dan Paff again, getting back into making sure that I'm how are my warm-ups, how have our speed acceleration development programs, what do they look like, playing
Is it
around
all
with
for hockey, Maddie? All
yeah, I
for
mean,
hockey?
no, we have some, we've got some football players and some basketball players, and
Okay.
alpine skiers, and a mishmash of this and that. But primarily our bread and butter there is hockey for sure. So, but in this space, like you, it's the worst thing ever for me, because before, being such a small space, it was easier for me to say, well, I can't buy that extra thing because I don't have any room for it. Well, now I got room for it, and now it's like every little gizmo and gadget and toy and everything I've seen, I got to be a little more responsible now and restrain myself sometimes, like the books. Like maybe I should read all the books I have before I
Yes.
buy 10 new ones,
That is funny. What's some new equipment you've picked up?
Yeah, well, we've been playing around with, there's a company that makes something called the Nord board. I don't know if you've seen that, like the Nordic hamstring valve
Oh,
performance.
yes.
They've got a device called a force frame. So we do a lot of testing on that, but we don't. One thing that's important to us are I talked about this the other day with somebody, maybe even been you, but like we don't. It's not like an anatomy or biomechanics lesson in our gym. We're not talking about the names of the muscles or this or that. Our players are in there doing Eldoa, but they don't know they're doing Eldoa. They just think it's stretching, or they do Pilates, but it's not Pilates, it's core, and
Yes.
we don't differentiate. We don't tell them it's frontal plane and this. They know they're doing core. They know they're doing lifting. They don't really. But with the valve performance equipment, we're measuring a lot of these things, and we're using it just as an exercise. So with Nordic hamstring exercise, are you getting stronger or not, and is there symmetry or not? That's it. And we're looking at adduction, abduction. So playing around with that. We've been testing more regularly, vertical jumps, standing long jumps, things like that. We don't make a big production about it. We just, we get the guys to compete. We treat it like an exercise. We throw it in. We've got room to do more of that stuff now. We add, some 5-yard, excels, 5-yard starts, and we just add it like an exercise. Instead of a high pull or clean, it's a 5-yard sprint, and we time it, and we record everything, we track everything. Equipment wise, we've got a few new little toys, gizmos, and gadgets, and but at the end of the day, that stuff's sometimes that's more for my entertainment. I'm always liking new stuff. But
what about software to record? How are you recording?
What? I'm the absolute worst guy. I'm like, I just got an iPhone about a month ago. I've been on a BlackBerry. That's what I got. So, but I have wonderful,
That is
university
funny.
kid named Steve McKenna is our co-op student with us this summer, and he's Steve the computer guy, and he actually has built a really cool dashboard, so we can create little progress reports for our athletes. We work, the majority of our hockey players are NHL professional athletes, so we're able to send a report to the team to show them, hey, here's where this guy's at. Like here, I can tell you, hey, Zach looks great. He's looking jacked. He's super fit. I want to send them objective,
Nice.
third party measures like that. So
Yeah.
that stuff doesn't change. We're still lifting barbells and lifting heavy dumbbells and lifting logs and doing all the cool shit that we love. But we have to also accompany that with some of these new metrics and some of the, the force plate work and things like that can give the teams, the objective measures. It shows them that we're not just a bunch of Neanderthals throwing heavy things around, that we're actually putting some thought into it, but we're trying to find that blend. We don't always strike a perfect balance. And there's some days that I look at the program and I'm like, you know what, fuck this. We're just going to lift heavy. We just got to lift. We're just going to lift today, or we're going to go out and condition today. And I don't care about the science, especially with my younger guys. Sometimes we just got to, I believe you got to go out and grind. And maybe that's a very unscientific thing, but I know for me as an athlete, before training camp, I had to do at least one workout, at least one. The goal was not, and I do not, just, disclaimer, I do not do this with my athletes, but I know for me personally, I had to push myself to the point of throwing up at least once before training camp. And that is completely unscientific. And there people will listen to this and say I'm an old bonehead idiot, meathead, whatever. But I needed that because then I knew, you know what? There's nothing that's going to happen at training camp that's going to be harder than that thing I just did. So I'm good.
There's so much power to having the confidence, knowing that you put in this work and you did the preparation. And there's a lot of little ways that, I think when people hear us, it could be as simple as, listen, we just finished training. Let's just run a mile as hard as we can. Look, sometimes that's okay to do, even if in your sport you don't run a mile. Like I train a kid, he's an offensive lineman. He told me the other day he ran 2 miles. And I was like, dude, you really shouldn't run 2 miles. You're 315 pounds. He's like, really? He's like, I felt good.
But how cool but so you know what? Like,
he's like, I'm fine.
We're focused on, we're so hyper focused on the bioenergetics of this and the specificity, but there's something to be said for doing scary, uncomfortable shit that you don't want to do and getting it done, sucking up and getting it done. And that's not a very, scientific
and
way
I gotta say, sometimes that's part of the preparation. You have to assume as a coach, maybe not in the NHL, but maybe it's in the NFL too. It could be at these high levels. Some of these coaches might do stuff that doesn't make sense. And if you're always so perfect and you train your athletes that way, sometimes they are just fragile, physically and emotionally. Today,
I think I mentioned to you on the last time we spoke, like my last year, and I wish I had done it much sooner. My last year of university, I wrestled in the off season.
Oh yeah,
as cross training, and originally my thought was, I want to do this for core, whatever that means, core strength, and in uneven, awkward positions, because as a defensive lineman, that's the position. And it may have done that, I don't know. But what it did do, that was the hardest fucking thing I'd ever done. And I've done a lot of hard training to that point. I was at that time in my life, I was a very, big, strong, fit guy. I worked really hard. Nothing was like wrestling. And the cool thing for me, maybe it improved my core strength. I don't know. Maybe it did. I have no idea. But you know what it did do? I knew that at training camp, there is nothing that they can throw at me that's going to be anywhere near as hard as that shit that I did in the wrestling room. So I'm good. You want to make me run? You want to make me run stadium stairs? I got it. We're going to do gassers. What do you got? Nothing's going to be harder than that. It's
like
gives you confidence.
Yeah, you keep it in your mind of what you've done before. I still utilize things that my coaches taught me from wrestling. And so it's like, all right, do I got to sleep on the floor? So what? I've done such, shitty things, that the hell we've gone through. In this book, Maddie, there's a part, it's just like a short part called Spartan training. And Frank says that like the beginning of the whole training phase that the Russians did was always this like cross country training. It's like you saw the Polish weightlifting video where they're running through the woods and throwing logs. He's like, that's what they all did. They went on these like long endurance type tough training. And he's like, everybody did it. It didn't matter what their sport was. And look, we know that it could be dangerous. For example, we know that the big guys in football have died, right? And
Yeah.
that is actually proof of, you know, kids of today versus, I don't know, did we hear of football players dying 20 years ago? I didn't. You know,
And
me.
again, and back to that, it's so funny, but it's very different what you can do to yourself or what you did to yourself
Yes.
versus what you're going to make somebody else do. Like I
100%.
made myself run until I puked. No one made me do that. No one
That's
cared.
right.
It was there. I could have left at any point in time. It was my choice to do that, right? It's a very different thing as a coach. So, you know, you have to, you walk a very fine line, and I don't subject the kids to that. But I think that, you know what, in some small way, I wish they would do that to themselves, because I can't do it. I can't with good conscience do
Correct.
that to
Because
you.
we're too scared. Now we're like, you know what I say to kids all the time? Don't ask me for water. You need a drink? Go get a drink. You need fresh air? Step outside, get fresh air. I'm here, you know. But then I think of wrestling. We wrestled 3 hours, no water break ever. You know, so like when my son has to go to an hour of baseball and he's like, I need a drink. I'm like, are you fucking running for an hour? You're going to stand around most of the time.
There's an amazing George Carlin live in New York City when he was still
Yeah.
alive. God rest his soul. And he does a bit on that about people that leave, you know, go out for a walk or run with their bottles of water.
Yeah.
It's like, when the fuck did this happen? Like, just take a drink before you leave the house. Like, were you like, couldn't you just have a drink before you left? Why do we need our own personal supply of fluids every time we leave, you know?
So you have to be smart. You know, athletes coming in need to be built up to these things, and you have to have the coach's eye, and you need experience. Like you said, if you've only done everything so perfect, you don't really know, am I reaching the fine line? Is it too easy? So on and so forth. You know what we've been doing as a warm up to today. So you've seen the Russian athletes when they play basketball, especially if it's like wrestlers, you know, they're double dribbling. So when I train two teams together and it's basketball, I say, we're going to play Russian basketball warm up. We play up to 5. So the basketball team, you have to put your good hand behind your back. You could only use your non-dominant hand. You guys, it's interesting. In the bubble on one side is like 5 hoops. On the other side is 1. So I go, the basketball team is shooting this way. You only have 1 place to score. And then today they played against the hockey team. You'll love this. So hockey had 5 baskets, and you know, they were like body checking the basketball players. So I was laughing so hard. I was like, you know, one of the biggest kid on the basketball team got body checked by a kid. I was like, dude, you just learned what a body check is. I was like, last time I saw that was on ESPN in the 80s. I was like, you guys can maybe take some of that to the basketball. But it was good for basketball to do things like play with one hand, to play against kids who didn't know how to play basketball and get body checked, because some of our kids are a little bit timid. And so they actually experienced, you know, physical, tough basketball. And the hockey players were sprinting, jumping, cutting. That was, I feel, their best speed and agility. And so when I talk about, you know, I hate the word mental toughness. I do like the word grit, but I think just taking somebody out of their natural element and doing something like that builds added toughness. And, you know, me, you know, saying, okay, today we're going to see how many reps you could bench 135 pounds for. If you've never competed, now I'm going to give you another ounce of mental toughness. Now you learn to compete. Today at my gym, we had 5 girls. So we did a sled relay race of girls versus boys. It made the girls get tougher because they got to learn to compete against, oh, they're stronger, da, da, da. I don't want them thinking, I don't want them having that kind of thought. And then the boys learned what it's like to have pressure of, oh, I'm not supposed to lose to a girl. They lost to the girls.
I love it. I
And
love to hear
so
that.
I feel like all these little new things build, maybe the word isn't toughness. Maybe it's just another, you're building that belief in yourself of what you're capable of doing. And it could be, Coach Reeve told me, why do I teach the Olympic lifts? He's like, because they are complex and they're not as easy to learn as a deadlift or a squat. Even though there's many details to it, you're seeing who's coachable, you're seeing who's willing to keep working on technique, you're seeing who can handle a complex movement pattern, and now they carry that over, and maybe they're learning a hockey drill or a wrestling drill that's complicated. Well, they say, oh, I've learned something complicated in the weight room, I'll carry it over here. So that's how I look at those things versus when you and I were kids. You did sprint and then you did see guys throwing up and nobody was like, oh my God. They were just like, oh, Maddie's throwing up. He's going to come back online when he's done throwing up. And, to me, if somebody's like, I don't feel good, you know what I say? All right, you're done for the day.
Yeah.
And I know that, somebody who's not educated in coaching would be like, well, that's not tough. But you know what? I got them to a wall today, and tomorrow they'll go an inch further.
Yep.
That's all.
Yep.
And so you got to do play that long game. Whereas I think back in the day, we were just thrown in the fire. And there wasn't like, hey, let's do a 2-week, 3-week buildup process. No, you're going to hell. Like they're throwing you straight to hell. So, I'm able to, and we're able to pull from experiences that are not the safest, smartest. And now we blend kind of what is appropriate, So that's it, my bro. That's all we got,
Great
right?
chatting as always.
Great
Always
chatting. Maddie, what's your Instagram handle for people to follow you and they could reach out to you? And also, are you taking interns that are not in university?
Yeah, we do. You know what? We're pretty picky about that, but it has nothing to do with their resume. I could give two shits where they studied or what they studied or what their grade. I could care less about that. I don't care about their certifications or anything like that. So we do take interns from time to time, but it's a pretty tough process, and we're just looking for great people, like great people that are willing to work hard, are willing to learn, willing to be open-minded, are coachable, teachable, and trustworthy.
What do they have to bring to the table? Anything specific that you look for during this interview process?
You know what? It's hard for me because as a young guy that age, I was so desperate to do anything to get better. I was burning with passion for it. So maybe I'm probably maybe it's a little unrealistic, but I do want to see that drive. Like, and it's, there's that movement afoot now where, everyone has to know their value and know their worth and don't, I don't think anyone should have to work for free, but I think you should be willing to.
Yes.
I don't think you should have to do that. I don't think you should be subjected to that, but I think you should be willing to. I don't think that I would never ask an intern to, come in and take out the garbage, mop the floor and get me a coffee. I wouldn't ask you to do that, but you should be willing to do that. I would do that. I would do that for you.
Correct.
So I don't, I think that's the kind of that enthusiasm, that passion for the industry, that willing to, be the first one in, last one out. That's the kind of personality set that we look for sure. And we've got some great ones. So we're lucky that way.
Here's what I would do if I was young, no wife, kids, any of that stuff, is I would reach out to you and I would find out, is there somebody I can room with who's an intern and, pay rent? And I would find out when the start date could be. I'd work someplace to accumulate money. And then I would do my internship, and my quote unquote payment would be all the knowledge I'm going to get. Because when I get out of there, I'm going to be an expert. Not that now I'm done learning. And then I would say, okay, I'm coaching all day with you and I'll find a job elsewhere to get the money so I could pay rent. That's what I would do to immerse myself.
Mike Potenza, who's the strength and conditioning coach of the San Jose Sharks, he talked about that. And he said the 3 experiences that put him in life and in professionally and personally where he is. He worked for Mark Verstegen when he was still at the International Performance Institute. And he worked at Miami Hurricanes football, and I can't remember the third placement was. He got zero. He got paid zero for those experiences. Didn't ask, wasn't offered. Right. I don't think that's it's
dollars.
Zero, like zero. Right.
Yeah.
I don't think that's again, and people are going to be up in arms and going crazy. We're not looking for that's before disclaimer. We're not looking for interns. Like, we don't post it. We don't need interns to run our business. We're overstaffed on an average day anyway. We don't need more staff. We have a low volume of business. I do it because I like to give back, and I do it because I wish I had more opportunities like that. But I would say that, again, I don't think the intern has to be, treated like a piece of garbage. I don't think the intern should be made to go clean the toilets, but you should be willing to do that. You would have done that. I would have done that.
I do it today. I'm cleaning sinks and toilet every day. It's not a big deal. I do it at home. But also I look at it as you're getting paid with this knowledge that will pay you back forever. Meaning none of this was available. When I got into strength and conditioning, I was already, almost married full-time. I was already a full-time teacher, so I couldn't go and intern anywhere. But I understand that if I'm gaining knowledge, that knowledge will pay me back for a lifetime. Because if I didn't learn this great coaching, how am I going to be a great coach and find work or build my own work, build my own business? That's the message here.
That's what I mean. I can only speak from my own experience, and that's the only reason that I am where I am today. Is guys like Dr. Mauro Di Pasquale, working for him for almost 3 years, doing anything he asked. I moved him into and out of his house. I moved his office. Anything. 2 o'clock in the morning, you need to do it done. Yes, the answer is always yes, right? Ken Kanakin, the same thing. Who's now not only a great mentor, one of my best friends in life. The answer was always yes. What do you need me to do? I got to go pick up whoever. I got to go pick up Paul Check or Ed Cohn. Bill Kazmaier. Can you go pick up Bill Kazmaier at the airport and take him to the hotel and hang around with Bill Kazmaier for the next 2 hours? I should be paying you for that. I'm not asking you for $1. I should be paying you for that experience. So
if you're not fired up to want to learn, then you're probably the coach that's not fully engaged when you're coaching. You're probably touching your phone. You probably see somebody squat halfway and you probably say, whatever, man, he squat, those details will not mean anything to you. But every day I catch myself, and I'm not patting myself on the back. I think the right people are going to understand what we're saying. But every day I catch myself saying, hey, let's go a little lighter and get a little lower. All right, you got 2 reps. How many are you supposed to get? 4. Tell me what you got to do the next set. I got to get 4. You're not going to get 4. You struggled on the 2. Tell me what you got to do. I got to go lighter. But if you are not so fired up about it, you'll be like, whatever. He got 2. He did his best. No. I need to teach this kid. Let's go lighter.
And that's why you're playing the long game. Same here. And you can't mail it in this job. You're not just you're dealing with people's hopes and dreams and goals and passion. And you can't mail that in. And one thing I stress to my staff is there's a difference between a lifeguard, a swimming instructor, and a swimming coach. Right. And, typical, trainer at the gym, count, scowling, count to 10. You look like a doorman at a friggin' nightclub, right? And I'll often watch and I think, what are you watching right now? Because I watched this guy do 10 reps and 9 of them were awful. What did you see? Because you didn't say anything. Did you stop?
They may not know what they may not see those little things that are wrong.
And that's the lifeguard at the pool who's saying, you know what? I'm going to watch this guy squat and make sure that he doesn't collapse on the floor with a bar on his neck and end up on gym fail. That's level 1. Level 2 is, I'll do a good demonstration. I'll put the workout on the board and I'll throw a cue here and there. The coaching is what you're doing, where you say, hold on, forget about the workout. Forget about that for a second. What are we doing here? Let's stop. How are we going to break this down? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What do you want to do?
I get fired up about this.
Yeah, me too, man. But that's the
I
passion. You
I
can't
can't
do this.
wait.
You can't do this business. You can't be in this business for this is 23 years for me working with professional athletes.
Yeah.
And I did some little, personal training stuff on the side before that, but you can't have a career like that unless you are passionate about it. And you have that burning passion inside of you for coaching. You can't.
Relentless pursuit of excellence. I can't wait I'm going to make it to the next Swiss that's in person. I can't wait to
Absolutely.
see you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's usually in the fall, correct?
Yes. Yep. I know Ken
So,
will announce it soon. I guess all this COVID stuff is
right. I don't think it's going to be this
no, probably
fall.
no. Unlike,
Correct. 2022.
yes.
Nice. All right, Matt, what's your Instagram? My bad.
Matt _ Nichol, MATT _ NICHOL.
You're the man. Everybody watching and listening, big thank you. And we'll talk to everybody soon. Matt, hang tight, my brother.
All right, so have a great night.